Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today. And in the time of pandemic, this has become one of the new normals. And video conferencing has never works perfectly, so please be patient. We'll be taking questions at the end. I really want to thank all the members of the press who have been hanging in there with us and trying to use these new modes of communication to get information. Obviously, we won't be able to take every question. If you have additional follow-up, please do talk to Anthony or our comm shop, Parks comm shop, or talk to Sam's shop, because we want to get you the information. We know that in this time, I've been working very closely with the governor. We will begin to reopen Seattle. We think of it as almost 3 phases. Well, there's technically more than that. The first is the emergency response and relief phase. The second is the reopening, and then after that is the rebuild and the recovery. We're still in the emergency phase, and even though Seattle and King County have done well in flattening the curve, our incidents of disease are still high, and our hospitalizations are still occurring. We know now a really, I thought, surprising number to me, even though I watch this every day, was the new modeling that shows that probably in excess of 95% of people in this region have not been exposed to COVID. That means 95% of us are still susceptible to the virus. And as we reopen our society and our businesses, we will expect that more people will get sick. And we're really going to be focusing on a number of things that the governor's highlighted and we have highlighted. First and foremost is that we have some ability to see how, when, and where the virus is growing in our community so that we can take appropriate steps to isolate people, to slow that transmission. That's only going to happen with testing and contact tracing, which we don't have yet. We will be aggressively pursuing all the steps we need to do to reopen, but we're in a phase right now where we still really need people to be staying home in order for Seattle to stay healthy. As wonderful as this weather is, and all of us look forward to May in Seattle. We go through October, November, December, January, and it's particularly hard to be cooped up at this time. So we're going to be making some announcements today about what Seattle's going to look like now and into the future, and how we can be that better city. With us today, one of the things, if there's a positive thing to come out of COVID, we've seen that vehicle traffic in Seattle has dropped by about 57%. And nationwide and globally, the drop in carbon emissions is shown that air has gotten cleaner, and it's been very good for our climate. So as we reopen, we're thinking about today, how do we reopen and rebuild in a way that is a healthier Seattle and a better Seattle going forward? We've been able to, during this time, to, except for one weekend, keep our parks open, and also close down a number of streets that we call our healthy streets, to make those places for people to be able to spread out a little bit, walk with their families, local access. So we're going to find new and creative ways to maintain some of those traffic reductions as we return to the new normal. So today we can tell you officially that the 20 miles of streets that have been closed to traffic for local access only are stay healthy streets. We're going to make that permanent, and we're going to be working with neighborhoods and communities on how we might even add to that, both in the north end and particularly down in Rainier Valley, so people have more ways to get outside safely, to walk, and to bike. We also are going to be accelerating a number of our bike lanes so that as people return to coming to work, they can commute into Seattle safely. We know that it's going to take a period of time for our public transport to revamp and carry as many people as it did before. And many people prefer to walk or bike than they do to get on public transportation. So we want to make those options as easy as possible, and to do it in a time where it not only makes sense into the future, but it may be easier because there's less traffic now that we'd be doing it. So we're accelerating the installation of a number of greenways and bike lanes. We'll have the specifics. We're going to get input from our oversight boards. Sam's been at the drawing board. I've given him my top list and suggestions, but we want people to know that we want Seattle, as we rebuild a better Seattle. We also know that people have to get out of their houses. Even though to stay home, stay healthy, getting outside is great for all of our well-being. It's good for us physically, And we want to encourage people to do that. But at the same time, we have to remember it is stay home, stay healthy, not stay outside. So this coming weekend, it's going to be beautiful weather. We know people are going to be going to the parks. Jesus is going to be talking to you about the parks when they're open and some new rules around that. But we really need Seattle to be smart. We don't want to be those people that we see by the thousands storming the beaches in Florida or Southern California. So crowded parks will become closed parks because remember, most of us are still susceptible to this virus. And when we come together, that's when the virus can spread. So get outside, but keep moving, keep walking. If you get to a park and it's crowded, turn around and walk the other way. If you can use a smaller neighborhood park, do that. If you're fortunate enough to have a backyard, grill in your backyard. But in our parks, we won't have barbecuing or picnics, no gatherings, no group sports. We have to continue to be smart. And if we do that together, we will get through this sooner and be able to reopen sooner. We know this has been enormously hard on everybody. There's the anxiety of those people who are fear getting ill or they know somebody who has. Many people have lost family or loved ones. We also know so many have lost their jobs or the businesses they worked so hard to build up. We are working really hard at the City of Seattle to really serve those community needs and to get money in the pockets of people who are most in need at this time. I'm really proud of the work that County Executive Dow Constantine and our governor have done on those fronts and our congressional delegation to really put at the top of the forefront the needs of the people of Seattle and the workers across Washington state. This weekend's a special weekend. I can say it because I'm a mom. It is Mother's Day. And so as a gift to your mother or grandmother, please remember, stay home and stay healthy. It is our seniors who are most at risk. And we've seen an enormous amount of disease spread in senior homes in our region and across the country. So if you won't do it for yourself, please do it for those you love. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Sam, who will talk a little bit about the streets, and then Jesus, who will talk about our parks. Sam, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Durkan. Today we're excited to announce some important actions that SDOT is taking to help Seattle transition thoughtfully towards reopening and carefully towards our new normal. To do that, as Mayor Durkan mentioned, we're announcing three things today. First, despite the many challenges that we face, 2020 will remain a year of forward progress for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, making safe places for people to walk and people to bike, people of all ages and all abilities, as we make Seattle into a more livable city for all. Second, the 20 miles of stay healthy streets that we've implemented to date will become permanent, and we'll continue building on that network with another 3 miles starting this weekend in both Rainier Valley and near Alki Beach. The third is that we're going to take more steps to make our sidewalks and our streets more safer and more friendly for people walking by changing how we operate traffic signals, meaning that people will have less time to wait at intersections, less time for people to congregate at our intersections as they're waiting, and make it easier for people to get across the street as they're getting around the city. We see our colleagues around the country and around the world thinking about how, as we have a phased reopening of travel and people getting around the city in new and different ways, how our transportation system has to respond to those new demands. So we're committed to making Seattle a place where people can safely walk, bike, roll, take transit, and do whatever they need to do to get around, because if the only way that we can reopen our city and reopen the economy of the city is by having everybody jump into their car and try to get where they need to go, we won't be able to be successful in all of the recovery that we need to do. So as the mayor mentioned, our work to accelerate projects across the city, the implementation of projects for people walking and people biking, We'll have more details on that in the next the next little bit, but we are working across the department to think differently about how we design, build, engage with communities in expanding our system for all ages and abilities getting around the city. We've been able to do things very quickly with our Stay Healthy Streets, seen rapid success in that, including large increases in the numbers of people walking and biking on those streets, and decreases in through vehicular traffic. We think that just a few weeks of that, building on our existing greenway network investments, has shown us that we can upgrade those streets to be more permanent investments, and build on those benefits out into the future as we think about maintaining a transportation system that serves essential trips as well as all of the things that people need to do to get around the city. And we continue to build and install bike lanes and new sidewalks as part of our capital program, which has continued safely through this whole period. We're nearing the completion on some important connections, and we have others under construction this year. And then we're looking at ways that we can accelerate projects and bring those forward as quickly as possible. We've also begun the process as we've seen travel demands change some of the directions and times of day of travel. We've changed how we time traffic signals to account for those different and changing demands. We've added a number of pedestrian safety features across the city, and will continue to do so as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jesus for a little bit more discussion about what is going to happen in parks in the near future.
Great. Well, thank you, Sam, and thank you, Mayor Durkan, for your leadership during this really unprecedented time. And I want to thank all of the folks at the Department of Transportation and the police department and for helping us make it possible to keep all of our public spaces open during this challenging time. As the mayor stated, this weekend is going to be much warmer than it's been in months. And of course, we are also celebrating all of the mothers and mother figures in our lives. In previous years, this is when we've seen some of the largest crowds in our city parks, and particularly our most popular parks. So we want to make sure that this year is different, and we can only do that by working together. We've been really fortunate in Seattle over the past many decades that our community has invested significantly in our parks and green spaces, and as a result, over 11% of the land mass here in the city is parkland. We have over almost 500 parks across the city, and 94% of us are lucky enough to live within a 10-minute walk to a park. And additionally, and many thanks again to the Department of Transportation, our streets and our neighborhoods have a lot of this green space and natural beauty, and we're really excited about the continued growth and the permanence of some of these Stay Healthy Streets program. Over the last few weeks, Seattle and Washington State actually have been in the news for how we're leading the way in the nation's fight to slow the spread of COVID-19. And in fact, we've actually been a good example of how we can keep our public spaces open without crowding. Much of that success has been in large part to our residents and folks who are visiting our parks. And so we have to be really smart as we use our public spaces, and we've been able to do that to reduce some of the crowding in our parks. So this weekend, as we go into a beautiful, warm Mother's Day weekend, we want to show the country that we can continue to do this right. So a few reminders as we go into the weekend. As the mayor said, our parks are open for running, walking, biking, but we're still at a stay-home order. We want folks, when they get to the parks, to keep it moving. We don't want folks to come to parks and expect to have picnics or gatherings. And if we can keep it moving, the parks can be open for more of us to use as we move in and out. Again, we are stay at home, so we encourage people to stay at home and to stay local. And if folks have to get into a car or even a bike, you're probably going too far. So use your backyard if you have one, or walk in your neighborhood. And then use one of your neighborhood healthy streets or visit your local parks. Again, we have almost 500 parks across the city, and many within 10-minute walks of our homes. Also encourage folks to visit parks during less popular times. Mornings are typically the least busy times in our parks, so go out and go for your walk early morning. Parks are like everything else. If you leave your house, practice the healthy hygiene, wash your hands, stay at home. If you're sick, please don't visit the parks. And when you get out to the parks, make sure that you give yourself and others at least 6 feet of space, and more so if you're running or biking. As we go into the weekend, just to remind folks that motorized boat ramps continue to be closed, as are tennis courts, basketball courts, play areas, athletic fields. picnic shelters, anything again that's high touch and encourages folks to stick around. Those remain closed. We also have our parking lots at our most popular parks that do remain closed. But I will say that we're also announcing that we have four of those parks that we're opening accessible ADA parking only at those parks, Magnuson, Green Lake, Seward, and Lincoln. And we'll have enforcement for those. And lastly, we're also announcing today that our major parks will be closing at 8 p.m. each night, starting Friday night. And this early closure is going to continue through the duration of the stay-at-home order. And this change in the hours is really just to further deter the types of activities that go against sort of the keep it moving, the barbecues, the bonfires, the gatherings, and the parties that happen in some of our parks. The parks that are going to be closing at 8 p.m. Each night starting Friday are Alki, Cal Anderson, Carkeek, Discovery Park, Gasworks, Golden Gardens, Green Lake, Kuboto, Lincoln Park, Magnuson, Seward Park, Volunteer Park, Washington Park Arboretum, and West Seattle Stadium, as well as Myrtle Edwards, Judkins, and Woodland Park. And then just finally, as a reminder to everyone, as this weather gets warmer, just want to remind folks that swimming beaches still remain closed. There are no lifeguards on duty. And in fact, swimming during the springtime is especially dangerous because the water is much colder than it looks. And it's especially dangerous for folks who are out there swimming and can be really a safety hazard. Again, our social distance ambassadors are going to be out and about in these parks, reminding folks about these important guidelines and gathering data on the usage of these parks. And as the mayor said, we want our parks to stay open, but they can't be crowded. So we encourage folks to follow these guidelines. And when you do get to a park, please keep it moving. So thank you.
And with that, we'll take some questions, but I just really want to again thank Jesus and Sam for the work they've been doing and all their teams have been doing, and give a particularly call out to our park staff who have been some of the front lines on this COVID pandemic response. People don't realize that when we say we open our community centers as shelters, that means it's our parks department staff who is there manning those shelters, taking care of people experiencing homelessness. And park ambassadors is another name for park employees. We always get asked about enforcement. What are you going to do about people who don't follow the rules? And I have a lot of confidence in the people of Seattle will follow the rules. And please don't leave it to the park ambassadors to tell you to have to keep moving. Don't make them tell you what 6 feet is. We're smart enough to do that. We know we're in the middle of this pandemic. It's still a health crisis for our city. And we do not want to see the return of days when we were worried about whether our nurses would have the equipment they needed or whether our hospitals would be overrun. And unfortunately, most of us have not been exposed to this virus. When we get exposed to it, it has a very high transmission level. We've been able to push that down only by staying apart from each other. So do get out if you need to, but don't plan on spending the day in a park. Don't plan on having picnics or bonfires. Don't plan on playing volleyball or group activities. Really, the parks are there to keep moving. So Jesus, thank you and all your team for all the work you've done. Sam, thank you for the work your team has done to get our streets open and healthier. At the same time, you're trying to do all the regular work and take care of this West Seattle Bridge. So with that, we're happy to take some questions. And I think, Anthony, you're going to moderate that.
That is correct, Mayor. So just as a reminder, when you're submitting a question, please include your name and agency. And if you can, please also who you would like to ask the question. So this first question is going to be for Sam. Sam from Tracy Record of the West Seattle blog. This is regarding Stay Healthy Streets. Is the stretch near Alki that you mentioned also going to be part of the permanent ones or just the ones previously announced? And the community request about removing Southwest Trenton from Stay Healthy Streets, can you give us an update on that?
Sure, and thanks, Tracy. The piece that we are looking at near Alki is a little piece of Beach Drive between 63rd Avenue Southwest and Alki, so out near the lighthouse, and out near the point. In terms of the upgrades of streets that have been previously implemented, what we've been able to do very quickly with our Stay Healthy Streets program is is try these out, and then as we think about upgrading them to permanent, see if there's any tweaks that we need to make. So I am aware of that community request. We've also seen, especially as Mayor Durkan said, as we think about the response to the West Seattle Bridge situation, how we need to continue to expand walking and biking opportunities within West Seattle, and then from West Seattle to other parts of the city to be able to manage the whole of the transportation system. So as we look at all of those needs within the community, and then how those connect into the larger citywide network, we're trying to be very nimble in our deployment, and then evaluation, and thinking about what it means to make them all permanent as well. So it's an iterative process for us, but we've seen a lot of success as we put these Stay Healthy Streets in place.
Thank you, Sam. This is a question.
Anthony, before we do that, since Tracy asked a question, I know she's asked before about fire response in West Seattle with the bridge not being there. And I just wanted to come back, answer that question she's asked before. The fire chief has worked out a plan to get additional equipment placed in West Seattle during this pandemic and while the West Seattle Bridge is out. So we're in the process of doing that, but it's our commitment to make sure that the people of West Seattle have what they need so that they know that they'll get the emergency response that they need. So details of that to come, but we haven't forgotten that question and we're moving forward.
Thank you, Mayor. Next question from Dan Beekman at the Seattle Times. This one is for Jesus. How many park staff will be out as ambassadors this weekend? Trying to get a sense of how big this effort is.
Yeah, we will have at least 60 parks ambassadors that are assigned to the big parks. But then in addition to that, our parks maintenance staff who are out and about doing their regular work, picking up trash and cleaning parks, also are submitting data to us on counts, as well as when they see folks who aren't complying, we'll encourage them to comply. On a busy weekend like this, we're trying to get even more people out and about, and obviously at the bigger parks, we try to assign more people.
Great, thank you very much. Next question is from Michelle Baruchman, Seattle Times. This is for both the mayor and for Director Zimbabwe. Given budget constraints, can you explain what bike infrastructure and neighborhood greenway improvements residents can expect to see this year? And I'll let you two fight over who gets to go first.
I'll take a first shot at that one. I think that's in my wheelhouse. So we have seen budget impacts across the city, and certainly within some of the sources that fund SDOT. A lot of our programs and projects that are under construction are fully funded and will continue as such, especially ones where that are under contract. We are definitely looking at what our financial situation is in 2020, and understanding what, if any, impacts there are to projects and programs. At this point, we don't see impacts to the planned walking and biking investments that we had planned for 2020. Again, certainly not the ones that are under construction, like some of the ones that are nearing completion, like our Avalon paving project in West Seattle, some of the work around Green Lake. We've started construction on the Northgate pedestrian bridge and trail connections. That won't be done in 2020, but that is planned for completion in 2021. The new Lander Street bridge that's under construction right now will open later this year and have a new bike lane connection as well. So we're both looking at what the impacts are to our existing plans and programs, but also ways that we can accelerate and bring forward some projects that might have been planned in the next coming years, even as we also do know that there are some revenue impacts. And that's why we're trying to look across the department at ways that we can be nimble and creative in bringing forward additional safe places for people to walk and bike.
Great, thank you very much. Mayor, do you have anything to add to that question?
No, I would. The only thing I would add is I think Sam's exactly right in terms of, as we're looking across our budget landscape, we're doing everything we can to fill that significant deficit that we have. But we also know there's projects that we got to continue or accelerate and invest in the city we want to be when we come out of this. And that's going to include a range of programs, both those that help people who are most in need, as well as those programs that really improve our public realm and our public infrastructure. You know, for example, this morning I was able to visit the arena that's being built for the new hockey team in the Seattle Storm. And it's going to be phenomenal. And I think it will reflect kind of who we are and our forward thinking, that when we come out of this, there will be those things that really show what kind of city we are and how we can come out of this building better than we were before.
Thank you very much. Okay, this will be our last question. This one is from Rosie Courtney, Port of Seattle. This is for Jesus. Can you confirm that there will be monitors at Golden Gardens? Wanted to share that families are parking at Shilshole Bay Marina, and there is limited access to monitor this parking lot.
Yes, we will have ambassadors at Golden Gardens, and we also are looking to put together a plan for the future, working with SDOT about some parking restrictions in that area. But we will have folks there monitoring the park and the parking lot.
And I again want to, that question raises again and emphasize, we really want enforcement to be our last resort. We want people to get out and do the right thing, to follow the stay-at-home order, to get out if they need to enjoy the beautiful parks that we have. But we're really counting on people to do the right thing, to keep moving, to not have groups and gatherings, to not use any of these parks like Golden Gardens, like are the traditional spring and summer party places. They can't be right now. The ambassadors will be there to remind people. If we have to, they will call and involve Seattle Police Department, but that is the last resort. The first and second and third resort is for us to be smart, and I think the people of Seattle know how to be smart. We're just counting on them to do that.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And with that, that concludes today's press conference. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. If there are any outstanding questions, we will do our best to get back to you in a timely manner. Thanks, everybody, and stay safe.